Welcome into the KSO show Monday morning. Mason Voth, Drew Galloway here with you. By the time you hear this, you'll probably be watching Monday afternoon or later. We finally have some basketball news to talk about again, and mixed opinions on this from a lot of different areas of the K-State base. You've got people that are applauding this decision. You've got other people that are going, well, actually, I don't know that this makes a lot of sense, or others that are who cares? Whatever. It's a bench addition. Doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. But that addition isn't really an addition at all. It's just keeping somebody. Roster continuity wins out. K-State will have a fourth member of last year's team on the squad this upcoming season because CJ Jones has withdrawn from the transfer portal and he will return for a second year in Manhattan. Served a role off the bench in most games last year, did start 9 times, but played in 33 games and had his share of games where you go, all right, that's what you added him for. And then other games where you say you got to get him off the floor. He's not playable, which is kind of just how bench players operate in college basketball.
It's also just how last year operated, honestly.
Which is the unfortunate part of where things stand for this team right now is that there hasn't been much consistency over the last 2 seasons. And from the just the player addition standpoint, or what CJ Jones is going to look like on this team and this roster, it's not a problem for K-State to bring a player like this back. I mean, you look basically at where you think the rotation might end up for K-State next season, and you already know that PJ Haggerty is going to play darn near 40 minutes a night. So you've got one guard already locked in. Abdi Bashir is probably going to play a hefty amount of minutes too, somewhere, and I would guess the 20 to 25 range. Andre Kostic, given the nature of how good he is expected to be, he's probably going to be north of 30 minutes. Nate Johnson was a big ad. He's going to be one of your key defenders. He'll probably be in the 30-minute range. Like, you're not going to need a lot from CJ Jones. So in terms of what this does as a one-off addition for next year's team for K-State, I think this is a fine, you bring him back into the fold type of deal. But 2 parts of this, the most immediate being, we didn't talk when we're listing off guards there. Okay, what's David Castillo's role going to be? It seems like this move would signal that, after not just the coaches, but teammates last year were echoing that they thought, oh, David Castillo is not like the normal freshman. He's going to be ready for this. And then he didn't really contribute much last year. He had that little stretch where he was a little gritty. He did some things, and a double-digit loss in Allen Fieldhouse and a loss at Baylor.
And it really wasn't a lot that he did. It was just that he did stuff that nobody else really on the team was willing to do at that time.
Yeah, he just worked harder than a lot of guys on the team in that moment. But then kind of fell out of favor in the rotation. You didn't see much from him the rest of the year. And things kind of got worse. He certainly did not shoot it to the level that you would have expected and was kind of thrown upon him. And like the team, if you were going to play last year, if you're David Castillo, I thought it was going to be because he was going to be one of the better shooters on the team. And that just wasn't the case on a team that at times needed some shooting help. So that's one thing to look at this move for, is that you may not be expecting another year of David Castillo production. And then the big picture part of this, where after months in the portal, not finding a landing spot, CJ Jones is coming back to K-State, and now K-State has shot past the scholarship number that they were originally thought to be using with the new roster limits, where you can scholarship all 15 guys if you want to. Originally, the word was that K-State Athletics was only planning on scholarshiping 13. Well, you're at 14 now, and based off the status of your roster, you kind of need to add one more. Now, it could stay at 14 because Tyreek Smith's eligibility is up in the air, and that kind of also plays into the head-scratching big picture portion of building a roster here, that CJ Jones as the player himself is not the problem in this. Bringing this player in is not even exemplifying what the problem is, but it's the concept and the reasoning as to why you were able to bring CJ Jones back in that starts to once again highlight issues that are there with this program building things out and long-term success.
Yeah, there are a couple problems that are with this move. One is I don't necessarily love the optics of a guy was willing to leave 3 months ago, and now he doesn't have a landing spot, and you kind of need more guard depth because, again, as you highlighted, like apparently David Castillo is not cutting it, and now you're bringing somebody else in. So like with that, I don't love the optics of that. As a player and in this role that he's going to have, I think that CJ Jones is fine. I mean, he is better suited for like an 8 to 10 minutes off the bench, provide some depth, hopefully play a little bit better defense than I did a season ago. Be a little bit of a facilitator and creator because that's what he was at UIC. He had times where he was a good facilitator and creator at K-State. He had a game with 6 assists against West Virginia. Played pretty well in the game against KU in Manhattan as well. But there are just a lot of things with this that I don't necessarily like. And the optics being one, and then the other just being you were already probably going over the scholarship limit anyway, or the scholarship set that you thought that you were going to have when you brought in Stephen Osei, who can't play this upcoming season due to injury. But I always anticipated that they were going to go over it because they were going to add another big. Adding another guard to a team that already has a lot of guards, has a lot of wings, just makes it a lot more crowded than I think it really needs to be. And I'm really interested to see like what a rotation is going to look like because now you added another guy that's 6'7" or shorter with CJ Jones coming back at 6'5". You have on your roster right now that we know of for sure that can play one guy that is like a true center that can actually like contribute. You don't have a bunch of.
Do you even have that?
I mean, you at least know that Kamari McGriff is eligible. He's eligible and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But, you know, the sixth man from UNC Wilmington last year
is probably going to be a starter at K-State because you kind of fumbled how you thought that.
I mean, he played 19 minutes a game last year at UNCW and the CAA, which is, you know, it's fallen out of favor in the mid-major league rankings.
That I think is more of like the big picture problem than adding CJ Jones is that this is another year where it feels like roster construction is not great because
it's like whose line is it anyway? You know,
yeah,
everything's made up and the points don't matter. That's kind of everything is just kind of made up, and it's like, well, you know, we'll see how it goes. If we like it, we like it. And if we don't, we don't.
And like to a certain extent, I like playing small, but you still have to have a 5 that is able to play. And we imagine they'll probably go into the international market and find a big probably in the next week or so. But then you're adding somebody again late and probably isn't as good as what you could have gotten out of the portal. Like the biggest fumble of the entire offseason was just assuming that Tyreek Smith was going to be eligible to play. And we talked about this at the time when they brought in Kamari McGriff. That was still kind of a problem.
We talked about this when the email release was sent out officially announcing he'd been added to the team and that K-State had to seek a waiver for him to play this season. Like that in the middle of a not good season, to me, was not a great way to kick off your roster rebuilding efforts in, you know, months earlier than most teams were, where you just go, why? Why are you taking this risk and just assuming like, yeah, it's going to happen? Like, you would have been better off maybe going and getting a known entity, or at least darn sure making sure that you had one closed up early in the portal cycle. And that's where like taking Tyreek Smith as a flyer is not a problem in itself. No. I think that there's a world in which Tyreek Smith is a good serviceable player. Same type of thing that I said for other additions in this offseason that you can look at for K-State, like Kamari McGriff. I think that would make sense for some teams. I think
Kamari McGriff makes a hell of a lot more sense if you have a big that can play.
I think CJ Jones, I think taking him back. Yeah, if it's another team, another situation doing it, you don't even bat an eye at it. You go, okay, yeah, Steven Osei. You bring in a JUCO big that probably going to have to sit a year and all that, like develop, but you could see something going on there. It all makes sense. But for this team that absolutely has to win right now and still has gaping holes on their roster, you just kind of go, well, none of this really is adding up, and you're in scramble mode again. And this is where they've been in the last 2 years, where you get later in the process and you have to kind of put a lot into some guys that, what are you going to do? I mean, go back to Quez Glover and Will McNair that they had to add 2 years ago. Those guys were already committed to other teams. Will McNair went on the international trip with Providence. Like, he was a part of the Providence basketball team. And then he ended up at K-State.
I mean, Tyreek Smith was a part of Memphis's team up until like 2 weeks before school started.
November or something. Yeah, I thought he was with him like deep into the fall or something.
Like the problem has just been the constant scrambling, and I know that beggars can't be choosers this late, but if you were going to add another guard, wouldn't it make more sense to add somebody that could like come back next season and be a guy that like maybe plays sparingly or even red shirts?
Well, that's where I would with this circumstance. I think you want a guy that, like, that CJ Jones's upside is that if you need to get lucky on a night and guys are struggling or there's a problem somewhere, there's a chance that CJ Jones can give you a really good 20 minutes on any given night, because he did it a couple times last year. He played really well in spurts in the Arizona game last season. He had other moments where you go, okay, I get it. Like, I don't have a problem with the decision to make this move with a guy like CJ Jones in terms of what his role will be, because I think you'd rather not have guys like that are just going to fester forever on your roster. But like, that kind of highlights where the other issues on this team is that once again, K-State's in a position where, and I know in college basketball, there's a lot of overhaul every single year now. Like, I get it. That kind of thing happens. It's going to continue to happen. K-State's in a position, though, where if you look at this roster, Tyreek Smith, if he plays, Kamari McGriff, Marcus Johnson, Nate Johnson, CJ Jones, those are 5 seniors. So if they all play, we know 4 of the 5 will, because they have legitimate eligibility. They can play. Tyreek Smith, we'll see. Those 5 guys are gone. They cannot come back. You also throw into the mix that you would figure PJ Haggerty probably going to the NBA draft after this year, a player that's an All-American, his 3rd year in school. He would probably...
You would guess he's either going to the NBA or playing at another school, because that's just what his track record is. He's on his 4th school.
And then Andre Kostic is a guy that's already showed up on NBA mock drafts, and even though he's young, but he's an international prospect that I think could actually blow up this year at K-State, and a lot of other people think the same. And those 2 guys right there are like credits to what this coaching staff has done this offseason, where they have made legitimate good moves. I like a lot of what they've done. I think, and I say I think because we don't have the connection to actually understand the personalities of these guys, but I think they've done a better job in getting better personality fits for this team and this program, and dudes that are at least going to show up and give a damn most days. And, not the circus act that they had last year, where, they had to take a swing, but like, maybe it should have been a red flag that Doug McDaniel wasn't allowed to play in road games at Michigan. Like, what was going on there? What was that? You kind of sold out for it. Maybe, I get the allure, and I thought that Coleman Hawkins in an expanded role would maybe be a little bit better, but you probably have some better access into his medical insights that would have shown that there were some issues there that were going to prevent him from taking that step forward. Could you have talked to somebody else and gone a little deeper there? Could you have understood the dynamic between, did Coleman Hawkins really want to play another year of college basketball, or were there other factors that pushed him in to doing that? Like, you just didn't have a team with a lot of buy-in last year. I think you have that now. And I think I look at a lot of players on this team and say, oh, I like what they're doing. The issue is that the hole seems so big because, as you see down there, there's only one player guaranteed right now that's going to play minutes for K-State next season that is taller than 6'8", and it's Kamari McGriff, who, as mentioned, only played 19 minutes a game at UNCW last year. Tyreek Smith is 6'8". He could possibly play. And if you have those two guys with his
too.
Yeah. And if you have those two guys as talented as I think the other positions can be filled out with, and how I think this team should be better offensively, I think you can survive like that. And I think you can be a good team, but it's no guarantee that you're going to have both of them. And you could still run into some troubles with the way that this could all work out. And so that's why the CJ Jones addition, it's not a problem with the player. It's not a problem with the role that they're bringing him in to provide, because basically you look at CJ Jones, and of rotation guys, you would go ahead and say, all right, well, Xavier Wilson, not going to be in the rotation this year. True freshman, recruited, brought him in, all that, like, probably not going to see the floor. Steven Osei, we know he's not going to play. David Castillo, this move would seem to suggest it's probably not going to happen with significant playing time in a clear-cut role. Taj Manning, we know, is not going to play a significant role on this team. So you have 14 guys on your team right now. 4 of those guys are guarantees to not really be factors in your rotation. So that gets you to 10. And then we know that Tyreek Smith is up in the air, so that gets you to 9. So, like, if CJ Jones is expected to be the 9th player in your rotation, 8th or 9th, because Moby Kegaruke will play a little bit, but I don't know what his role will look like this year. That's not a problem. But it's the fact that, like you said, Drew, there are other things that need to be addressed that are more important than finding an extra guard, because I do already think you've got enough guys that are going to be able to handle the ball and shoot it for you that you'll be fine on a nightly basis. Like Marcus Johnson, Nate Johnson, Abdi Bashir, PJ Haggerty, Andre Kostic, those guys should be fine. That should be plenty out there. It's nice to have the depth. Like, there's certainly going to be a game this season where it's going to be nice that K-State brought CJ Jones back. So I'm not trying to send water on that fire, but it's just one of those head-scratching things where you go and look, you let him go into the portal, and now you're coming back over 3 months later when there seem to be no other options. And because most guys go into the portal, they want a bigger role than what they've had, or a guaranteed spot on a team that's going to be able to perform better than what K-State did last year. That's just not like why CJ Jones is back, and that you would have thought that's what he would look for. So the issue comes down to what we've continued to see, and this feels more like a panic, we need to fill another gap here type of situation. And like I was saying, you now are in a spot where you have a lot of guys that probably aren't going to be back on next year's team, because most of them don't have the eligibility, and you have 2 other guys that might be so good that they choose to not come back to college, that's not a bad thing to have guys like that ever.
No.
You need players like that, but
you need players like that, but then you run into the issue of, we highlighted 4 guys that probably aren't going to see the floor much. And like, there's always that risk of like them also entering the portal. And then you're at 10 guys that you're replacing if all of them go, or if 3 of them go, you're still replacing 9. So, I mean, it's just, basketball is becoming such a sport now where it literally is just 1 year, and then we'll see what happens next. Because I mean, K-State's not alone in this. I mean, we talked about Baylor and UCF doing complete roster overhauls, but it can be a little bit tiring and frustrating to see. And then we've highlighted it a few times now, I have no real problems with CJ Jones. Like, I think that him coming back in a reduced role is probably what he is suited best for at this level. and like to a certain extent, this is kind of the role that we expected and wanted him to play last year when he committed, because we thought that Doug McDaniel would be good enough to play 30, 35 minutes a night. And then CJ Jones would come in and spot Max Jones and Doug and play like 10 to 15 minutes. Now he's probably going to play like closer to 8 to 10. And we're going to see kind of how that goes. And like also like on a roster full of guys that had problems, CJ Jones never once like had a problem while he was in Manhattan. So like it's fine from that standpoint too. It's just more of, this feels very, the timing is very odd. Like we talked about with on the football side, like the smell test of adding Luis Rodriguez a couple weeks ago. Like the timing just felt weird, and it makes you feel like something happened at kicker. And then you hear that like Cub Patton's not being mentioned. Like, is he hurt? Is there something like bigger happening there? This, like the smell test, kind of feels more like, is David Castillo like not cutting it?
Yeah, which I think it would lend you to believe that that is probably the case right now, because why would you bring back a guy that could be in essentially the role that Castillo could have when Castillo's got 3 years this year and 2 more after that left? You would rather Castillo take that role if he's anywhere close. Like, he could be a couple notches below CJ Jones, and you would still probably rather give it to Castillo. So I think it says a lot more about that. It's just too many times in this process, it comes across as in terms of this staff trying to build a roster recently, that they scramble. The methodology changes up quite often, more frequently than a lot of teams have to. And like, I'm totally aware that in college basketball right now, all these teams have to do this. Like, you can have a week where the plan changes 6 times. The problem is that K-State seems to have multiple stretches where the plan changes a lot. And you got to start, you can get a hit 1 out of 4 times, but you're only getting on base, at a 250 rate with your on base percentage there. You'd rather have a game where you go out there and, yeah, sure, maybe you go 0 for 3, but you took 2 walks, and so you got on base more than you did with the 1 for 4. Like, that's where I think you're kind of looking at right now with this team, is just the pay. Like, you have to kind of be a little bit more focused and make sure that you're doing things that can give you immediate results and plans. Like, you can have the guys like Haggerty, which are going to take big contributions, and that's going to be a longer and deeper process, but you need a lot of these other answers to be squared away first. And this is where, like, if you just taken care of your big man issue 2 months ago, or even a month and a half ago, then totally different scenario. But you're still sitting here kind of looking and working, and you hear all these different names that kind of cycle in and out. It feels weird to take a guy back like CJ Jones, when I think you could probably find a lot of CJ Jones in the portal still.
And
if you really liked him, you would have just kept him to begin with, or you would have gotten him back at a sooner point.
And what I don't think really changes, and like we've talked about, is CJ Jones as a player is fine and good enough for what he's going to be doing, to the point where I still think that this is easily an NCAA tournament team. Like, this is a team that should be in that 7 to 10 seed range, and you just see what happens when you roll the ball out. So nothing really changes from a holistic, what I feel, of the season standpoint, but just, again, as another move that makes you wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it ends up working out. I think eventually they'll find a 15th person to bring into this bunch. And again, he could end up being the 14th if the Tyreek Smith waiver doesn't happen. It'll have to be at a bigger size to kind of fill that role.
You'd also imagine or hope that since it's July 21st, they are at least close to knowing about Tyreek Smith.
Yeah. It'd be nice for him. I can guarantee you that. But again, that's why you either don't mess with a guy that you have to seek a waiver for and that you've known this for months, or you make sure that you have other solutions lined up. And so, worst case scenario, your team is just stronger and in a better roster spot than you thought you might be at this point. Because banking on Tyreek Smith, that is part of the problem with bringing him in.
It is legitimately wild, and I can't remember a time where I've seen a player on a team's social media practicing, but they still don't know if he's going to be able to play for the upcoming season. Like Tyreek Smith was on K-State basketball social media during the TBT practices, and they still don't know if he's going to be able to play.
Yeah, it's just.
I will say that they are recruiting like he's not going to be able to play.
Yeah, that's true. I think I don't want people to get this confused that I don't think a lot of what they've done this offseason is better and smarter. And I think that they have had more plans that have actually gone according to said plan this offseason. They clearly wanted to target the international pool. And by all accounts, Andre Kostic is probably going to be, he's probably going to end up being the best non-transfer addition that they've made since they've been here. Actually, that I don't even think that's up for debate. Like that's a guarantee. I think there's a world in which it could all be said and done that he is probably number 2 penciled in behind Keontae Johnson with how he could perform this year. Like I think there is that level of play that he could bring out. So you did that. I think you've added more guys that their personality, because that is such a big thing that we saw kind of hamper this team over the last few years. I think that it has improved, and you did it not only with guys that the personality is better, but I think their talent is there, and they're going to have some clearly defined roles, and they can do some things for you. But it's just that shortcoming of there still are a lot of moves on this team where you scratch your head and go, I don't know why you're doing this or why this makes sense. And it could all come together, but this was another one that there were a little bit of alarm bells situation going off. There we go. I thought maybe you were moving past this, but this was one that I just unsure of what it looks like long term if you have to do that in year number 4 of this process. And again, CJ Jones, not a bad player. The situation of him himself, the role he's going to have, not the issue here. I think that's actually a fine move. It's just, and maybe this is the bigger problem, is there's going to be a lot of things that I would say, well, if another staff did it, okay, not a problem. This one, you see things happening, you just go, I can't buy into that yet. I can't truly trust that there's an understanding and a grasp of what's going on there. But we'll see. I think this will be a good basketball team this year, but you can't guarantee it. And if it all crumbles, you can also see why that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly correct.
And like I said earlier, you just know that we're going to be talking about the same stuff next year because a lot of these guys probably won't be here. And that, to your point earlier, when you said, like, would you rather go and get a CJ Jones that is got like 2 or 3 years left to play? That would probably have some validity in that circumstance, but we'll see what happens. I think it helps K-State in the short term. But again, just looking big picture, I raise my eyebrow at it. Let's move on and wrap things up, reminding everybody about the 2025 Aer Lingus College Football Classic. You can visit cats2ireland.com to get your last-minute travel, ticket, and hospitality information. Get all that lined up right now because you've got almost exactly a month until the game kicks off. So you have less than a month now that most of you will be traveling over there. I think we have less than a month until flights are taken off and we are headed over to Dublin for the game on August 23rd, 2025 between K-State and Iowa State. So go to cats2ireland.com. If you're still thinking about being there, there are still plenty of ways for you to get to experience it, but you're running out of time. So do that, and we'll look forward to what we have the rest of the week. should be mostly normal. Friday, we'll do KSO Classic. We will talk K-State, Arizona State in the 2002 Holiday Bowl. So a pretty electric game there to discuss. And then we'll get
Thursday,
on
we might do something fun because there's probably not enough for recruiting updates. We might do something fun on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll have to kick around some ideas because, recruiting updates are going to kind of go dark for a little bit. And then we'll have to, mix in basketball has put themselves in the forefront of our minds again. So we'll probably have to talk about that again.
Probably won't have a recruiting update until about the first home game for football.
Yeah.
If I was to take a guess.
Feels like a ways away, but it also really is not. So that will do it for us today. We'll get out of here. We're back again tomorrow. We'll talk football on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, who knows, and then Friday, KSO Classic. So that's your outlook for the week on the KSO show. If you want more from K-State Online, you can always go to On3, find KStateOnline.com, and find plenty of stories covering the Cats, both basketball and football, and the recruiting efforts there. So everything going on with the CJ Jones return. Mount Rushmore season continues over there. On the weekend, we had tight ends. Today, cornerbacks dropped, and then some recruiting stories as well. So that's what you got lined up. We hope you take some time to go check it out. You get your first week for just $1 if you haven't signed up yet. It's certainly worth the $1. Everything that comes after that, I think, is worth it, but I do have a lot of bias in the situation. So we'll get out of here. We'll talk to everybody again on Tuesday.